I would not recommend this to a beginner. Alright, so today we are going to have more of a sit-down video, and I'm going to talk about some species of old world tarantulas that I would recommend to a beginner. Somebody who maybe has been keeping tarantulas a while and they haven't quite branched out into the old worlds. So before we really get into the species, I did want to mention that every tarantula I talk about today has medically significant venom. No one's died from a tarantula bite, but yeah, they can mess you up and make you feel real bad from what I've heard anyway. So every tarantula we discussed today, it has the potential to do that. Every species of tarantula, within it, there are individuals that are going to have different temperaments. So if I recommend a species, that doesn't mean every single one of that species is going to be the same. Some of them are going to be less defensive, some of them are going to be more defensive. This is just kind of like a general thing. I think I might have made this video before, to be honest, but it's been a while, and I also still have the first tarantula, the first old world tarantula that I ever bought, so I just kind of wanted to talk about her and show her a little bit too. And all the species we are going to talk about today, I actually do have experience of keeping, so there is that. And I've been keeping since 2017-ish. So the first species I wanted to mention is M. balfouri. This is a very common species that a lot of people, beginners and experienced, enjoy keeping. So Catra island blue baboon. These are pretty unique because it's one of the only species of tarantulas that we have well documented experiences keeping communally. I personally have not kept them communally, but a lot of people do. If you just type it in and it'll just pop up all over YouTube. There's so many interesting giant communals that people have documented keeping, and for the most part they do really well communally. It's like once in a while there's like a fluke you'll hear about, but for the most part they seem to do all right. Now as slings, they can be pretty bolty and fast, which is part of the reason why I haven't kept a communal. And when you're rehousing like 5 or 10 slings from one enclosure to another, that can be a little chaotic. I personally just don't want to deal with it, but a lot of people do, and they're super bolty. However, they are, I would say, typically less defensive than most old world species, which is why I'm putting them on this list. They also have like really beautiful blue legs. I think that they're a great attractive species that tends to be easygoing for a baboon, for an old world, and they're easy to keep. They don't really require much. They web a whole bunch. You can see their very intricate webbing all over YouTube. So many people have shown off their really beautiful enclosures. Number 4 is going to be the P. lagardi, also known as the gray starburst baboon. This is another African species. I love this species. They are related to the OBT, but surprisingly they have a reputation of being one of the least defensive old world species. They grow really steadily, and so I actually have one of mine with me right now. As you see when I open the door, she does get startled sometimes, but for the most part, she's just chilling right there. Pretty much like any tarantula, if they feel secure in their enclosure, you don't really have to worry too much about them bolting out of there. Something I absolutely love about this species though is the fact that they do grow quite steadily, and check out their feeding response. But yeah, this species is pretty much always hungry, always growing, molting very well, requires very little humidity. As you see, they're one of those tarantulas that flip the water dish and web it up every time. So I just do a light mist every once in a while, and that seems to be enough. I love the patterns on all their abdomens. We're gonna rehouse this one soon again already, and I feel like we just rehoused them like not even long ago, but it's fine, it's awesome. Number 3, A. azenami, the golden starburst baboon. This is another species from Africa. I think you're gonna kind of see a trend here. And typically this is one of the least defensive old world tarantulas that you can get. Like, I would say that if they were more available, I would probably put them at number 1, but because they're not always readily available, I put them at number 3. But as for temperament, I would say that this is going to be typically the calmest old world species that you can find. Now, I had an adult female for a really long time. She was absolutely beautiful, and she was a lot of fun to keep, especially because like after I rehoused her, she built this turret, and it was like the coolest tunnel that I've ever seen. I see Ephibopus make these as well a lot. They're really awesome like tunnels that they live in the bottom of, and that's pretty much what they do in the wild. So this is a species that I feel like they don't hang out very much on the surface if you're giving them that digging room. So there is that, keep that in mind. But for the most part, they're pretty calm. Of course, they do have their bolty moments. Of course, they do have the potential to bite, as any species does, and their venom is still considered more medically significant, although I will say it is rumored to be on the milder side of old world venoms. So I don't know what study or if that's just like a myth or what, but that's what I have read and heard. You guys know that I did have my adult female for a while, and I just recently picked up a little sling at an expo. Where did you go? She was just out right there. So we're kind of already hiding, as you see, like right in here, and we've webbed up a little bit. So we've already got our like little safe space. I think she did eat already, which is awesome. Hopefully. But yeah, I absolutely love this species, and I would probably rate it as the calmest old world that you could get, the most docile old world that you could get. But of course, there's always that potential, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so number 2 and number 1 are actually from the same genus. We have the C. Marshali, the straight horned baboon, and the C. Darlingi, which is the rear horned baboon. Yeah, these are all baboons. These are all African. But I love the Ceratogyrus genus. There's many different ones in the genus, but the most readily available ones in the hobby are going to be the Darlingi and the Marshali. I do also have a Sandiri, and I would recommend one as well, but they're not easy to come by. I don't come by them often. I still have mine. She's doing well. Her name is Cookie. I do not have my adult Marshali anymore, which is really upsetting. I absolutely loved her, but unfortunately baboons, they're not as long-lived as like Grammostolas. They do grow pretty steadily fast, and the faster that they grow, typically, like, the shorter their lifespan is. So, you know, just keep that in mind, but you're still going to get a lot of years out of them. So like 10, 15, maybe even 20 out of a female. I'm not sure. I think it would probably depend on like the species, but anyway, Ceratogyrus species are the best. My first old world species was actually this Ceratogyrus Darlingi, which I still have her, and I did get her as an adult, so I'm really surprised that she's still doing well. I mean, she definitely has aged since I first got her. I don't know if she'll be out. It doesn't look like she's gonna come out. And I've actually never rehoused her because she's always just like done well in this little critter keeper. She's probably hungry. Oh, she's got it. But yeah, I mean, as you can see, as a beginner, I think I got her like 5 years ago, maybe 6. And they're readily available. So the Ceratogyrus, Marshali, and Darlingi, you can find them as slings all the time. I think they're like 20, 30 bucks maybe for a pretty decent size. Even as adults, they're not that pricey. I used to be absolutely terrified of her when I first got her, but it didn't take long for me to realize that as long as she feels secure, she's happy. I will always recommend Ceratogyrus as somebody's first old world. Hands down. Now, before we end, I did want to give a couple honorable mentions. So these are species that I wouldn't exactly recommend for beginners, but I know that some people keep them as like a beginner old world. The first one I would say is the P. Metallica. I would not recommend this to a beginner just because they're arboreal and they are lightning fast, plus their venom is on the more medically significant side because they are P. Slithyria, and P. Slithyria do possess a pretty potent venom. Again, it's probably not going to kill you. Hasn't killed anyone before, but it sure can hurt. The thing is though, they're very reluctant to bite. So, you know, unless you're really antagonizing them, that's not something you have to be overly concerned about. I wouldn't handle them. I see a lot of people handling them. I wouldn't do that, but they're very commonly bred in captivity though. They're very readily available and they're beautiful. They are considered critically endangered in the wild, but because of the tarantula hobby, we really have an abundance of them in the hobby, which is amazing. That's exactly what we want to be seeing. They're not being taken from their habitats. We're not contributing to that endangered status. There's no need to be taking them from the wild because they're bred so much in captivity. They're very popular. The other honorable mention is H. pulchripes. This is a very common species that people love to keep. They're very desired because they have those electric blue legs. But I'm gonna be honest, I haven't personally had the best luck with them myself, which is why I didn't put them on my like actual list. For some reason, I had a sling do great forever and then just randomly die. And then I bought a confirmed female and she just stopped eating and would not eat and eventually died too. So I don't know what the thing is with them. Maybe I just had 2 flukes in a row. I just haven't had the best luck with H. pulchripes. I also think they need a little bit more humidity than other baboons. Definitely not on the higher side, but you know, they're gonna be a little bit more dependent on water from what I've noticed anyway. I also noticed they're a little bit more difficult to find and they can be a little bit more pricey. So that's why I didn't put them on the top 5 list. But if that's a species that interests you, then for sure go for it. I still would recommend them because yeah, they can be defensive and bolty, but but they're kind of on the lower end of that spectrum, and they're really beautiful. Anyway, that's just what I would recommend. Comment down below if you want to get your first Old World species, what species you want to get, or if you already have your first Old World species, what did you get, and are you happy with going with that species, or would you wish you got something else? That's all I have for you guys today. Like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're not, and you want to be. Don't forget I have an Instagram to use probably way too much. It's at Tarantula Kat. You can go follow me there. I also have a website, merch, everything is linked down below. I will see you guys soon. Let's get into the Patreon pet pics.